Good morning and welcome to Coffee with Alain. I have my book mug this morning because we're going to talk about some books because I enjoy reading. It's part of how I enjoy life. It's part of how I sometimes learn about staying safe. I'm going to talk about 4 books that I've recently finished. And the books we're talking about today are Time Flies by Bill Cosby. Yes, Bill Cosby, and we'll get to that. Dave Barry Turns 40. I Had the Right to Remain Silent, but I Didn't Have the Ability by Ron White. And Act of Treason, the most recent Vince Flynn novel that I finished. So those are the 4 books that we're going to be looking at this morning. Appreciate everybody that joins, everybody that comments, everybody that shares. It's all wonderful, and I appreciate you more than you can know. I do want to remind you, sign up for the Enjoy Life Safely newsletter. We're going to have a safety self-assessment in tomorrow's edition. So I'm working on that. It'll go out tomorrow on Sunday. Sign up at enjoylifesafely.com. Enjoy the information that you get immediately on situational awareness and some other tips on staying safe and self-defense. And then enjoy the newsletters on Sundays. Tomorrow's self-assessment on safety. Be an important one for you to look at what you're doing and maybe some things that you might want to change. So go do that right now because it's going to be a great issue. And I have a lot more planned for the people that sign up, on that email list. Let's get to the books. The first book on the list, Time Flies by Bill Cosby. Now, I had a number of Bill Cosby books in the library, in the boxes that I had never read. And I'll tell you this about Bill Cosby. I loved his HBO special that came out in the 80s. It was one of the most brilliant comic routines ever, I thought. His show on TV, I was a huge fan. I saw him live, and I don't know if I've laughed more at any other comedian I've seen. The guy was a brilliant comedian. And then the stuff that came out about what he was doing, just terrible. And I guess that shows that sometimes we never know. And it also shows that if something happens like that, we got to stand up and get out there and do something immediately. We can't let things go on for ages and ages. So with that said, I have these books of Bill Cosby, and I thought, okay, I'm going to check it out before I get rid of them. I'm paring down the library, so a lot of books I'm reading, I'm donating or selling or trading when I get done, and this is in that category. I'm not going to keep it, but I thought, okay, I'm going to read it, speed read it before I get rid of it. It's similar to Dave Barry Turns 40. He's talking about turning 50, and he's talking about turning 40 and things about when we age. I didn't enjoy it that much. I didn't find it near as funny as the stuff in the past. Now, am I tainted because of the things I know and what came out about him later? Maybe. Or maybe it just wasn't as funny as his comic routines live. But, I did do a really quick speed read and wasn't enjoying it, so I read it even faster and finished it. It just wasn't, a great book. I mean, it was okay. So that's what I got to say about Time Flies by Bill Cosby. Dave Barry Turns 40 was a similar book, talking about getting older. And this one I thought was funnier. And I enjoyed this one more. And I thought he had some stuff that made me chuckle more, than the Bill Cosby book. Even though Bill Cosby in the past has made me laugh out loud just hysterically with his routines, Dave Barry's book I enjoyed a lot more on a similar topic. And it was just a fun, light, comic type read. Really got the comedy these last weeks, and it's because there's some books that I'm not going to keep. My fiction book, self-defense books, martial art books, success books, I'm not getting rid of. But these books in the comedy genre, the novels, those I'm getting rid of. Ron White's book I really enjoyed because I really like Ron White, but I like Ron better live or, on his HBO or Showtime specials better than the book. his timing and delivery make his jokes better. Now, fortunately, I've seen all of his stuff. So reading the book, part of it is actually his stand-up material. And so when you're reading it, if you've seen him do it stand-up, you sort of got his voice in your mind and you got his timing, and it made it funnier. If you've never seen the material, I don't know if it comes across on print near as well as it comes across when he's telling it, to an audience. Then the other parts of the book were sort of, biography type, telling about his story a little bit. I really like that he owns a number of his faults, especially with drugs and alcohol. And I really like that he talked about Jeff Foxworthy and all the help that Jeff gave him and helped him with his career and with other things. And that he painted Jeff in a very positive picture, saying Jeff had some, positive traits that Ron doesn't have, especially about Jeff being nice to everyone and taking the time and doing stuff for others, including doing a lot for Ron. So I really like that he put that in the book too. And then I like his material, but if you've never seen him live and you don't have his voice and his telling of it, this might not be as good. I really think his stuff in person, telling to an audience, comes across as more funny than it does in print, just because of his delivery style. But I enjoyed it. It was a quick, light, fun read, especially if you're a fan of Ron White. Now I'll go trade it off. I won't read. It's not something I want to read again. And the fourth book today, getting through them quick because I got to hit the mountains with Rocky before it gets too hot. We're going to be up in the 90s today and tomorrow, so got to hit the mountains quick before it's real hot for us to be up there running around the mountains. So we're going to do Active Treason. This is the most recent Vince Flynn that I've read. I think it's the 9th in this Vince Flynn series. This one came out when did this one come out? This was 2006, before he passed away, and they started writing him with other books. Enjoyable, fast-paced Washington intrigue thrillers. And the ending was a little bit different than I expected, which Vince does sometimes. And remember, the book prior to this had an ending that I didn't see coming, and it was a little different than I expected. This one, he did it again. The ending was a little bit different than I expected. Didn't really see what they did coming, and I like that. And it was a satisfying ending, and it showed you a little bit more about one of the characters. And I'm not going to say much about it because I don't want to give spoilers if people want to read these books. But it was an enjoyable read, and I'm looking forward to the next one. I'm actually speed reading an old James Bond book, Casino Royale, right now before I start the next Vince Flynn. So I'm not going to start that until after my Vegas trip. And the Casino Royale was a short book that if I read a bunch today and tomorrow, I can finish it before Vegas and then start the new Vince Flynn when I come back. But great books. So those are the 4 books today. Going to say hello to Dixon. Dixon says, canceling Cosby's humor because he was a sexual predator makes as much sense as canceling Washington as a founder because he owned slaves. My 2 cents. Your mileage may vary. I agree, Dixon. And that's why I read the book. I expected it to be funnier than it was because, again, I've seen Cosby live. I've enjoyed his television show. I've enjoyed his comic routines on, I think it was HBO when he did that really funny one back in the 80s that just laughed hysterically at. The man was a brilliant comic, one of the funniest men alive in his time. And he did it with clean humor, not the profanity that somebody like Richard Pryor or George Carlin, at the same era did, which George and Richard were comic geniuses as well, and I love their stuff too. But some of their stuff wasn't appropriate for certain ages where Cosby's a little bit more was, which makes it all the worse when we find out some of the things that he did or was alleged to do and different things, regardless where you stand on that. It does show that people can have different sides, and they can be wonderful here and evil and terrible here. And sometimes we don't know. But you are right. He canceling his comment, saying he wasn't funny because he was a sexual predator is not true. He was hilarious. He was a comic genius. I have never laughed as much at any other show than his when I saw him live. And then it was just terrible news to find out the other. But that doesn't take away from his genius in that area. It just makes you really sad that somebody that could be such a genius and so well loved by so many people could have such a terrible dark side that tarnished his legacy. Rightfully so, because what he did was wrong. If all the allegations are true, which there's just too many of them not to believe that there's not fire where there's smoke. It's pretty terrible. But I expected the book to be funnier, and it actually it wasn't. And that was my review of it. And so the 4 books this week: Cosby, Time Flies. It wasn't as funny as what I expected. Dave Barry turns 40. A good read. Middle of the line. But I did laugh at this and found some stuff humorous. I still think the best Dave Barry book I've read was the one Dave Barry Goes to Japan, because I read it while I was in Japan and it really struck home. Ron White, I really enjoyed because I'm a fan of Ron White, but I think his live performances of the material come across better than the print of the material. But learning about his life and the other stories, those chapters, very interesting to learn about him. Enjoyed this one quite a bit, and really enjoyed Active Treason because I really like Mitch Rapp, the character that Vince Flynn created, and some of the supporting characters. Just fun, good thrillers. Those are the books for this Saturday. If you want to read one of those, wonderful, great. If not, I hope talking about books motivated you to read something else. Want you to get out there, read, enjoy, learn. And if you need something extra to read, get the newsletter at Enjoy Life Safely. Safety self-assessment test in tomorrow's issue. So sign up before that comes out. Everybody take care. Have a super spectacular Saturday.